I overheard parents plotting to scam me into buying my sister a 350K apartment. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old, and I've worked incredibly hard to become a successful software engineer at a major tech company in Seattle. My six-figure salary and frugal lifestyle have helped me save substantial money over the years. I recently purchased my own home after years of dedication and careful planning. I've always been close to my parents and younger sister Sophia, or at least I thought I was. Last month during a family dinner, I overheard something that changed everything I believed about our relationship. Before I tell you how I discovered my own family's betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt used by someone you trusted. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood where my parents constantly emphasized the importance of education and financial security. My father Richard worked as an accountant and taught me about responsible money management from an early age. He would sit with me every Sunday after dinner and show me how to budget my allowance, explaining concepts like saving interest and investments in terms my young mind could understand. "Emma, remember that money doesn't grow on trees," he would say while helping me count coins for my piggy bank. "If you want financial security, you need to work for it and protect what you earn." My mother Diana took a different approach. She was more emotional and seemed to have a special soft spot for my younger sister Sophia. While Dad taught me about spreadsheets and compound interest, Mom would comfort Sophia when she struggled with math homework. "Not everyone needs to be good with numbers," Mom would tell her. "You have your artistic talents, sweetheart. Emma can handle the practical things." This dynamic continued throughout our childhood. I became the responsible one, while Sophia developed into a free spirit. Now at 27, she works as a part-time graphic designer, creating beautiful artwork but struggling to maintain financial stability. Her income fluctuates monthly and she's always lived in rented apartments with roommates. Meanwhile, I followed the path my father had outlined. I worked 2 jobs through college to minimize student loans, graduated with honors in computer science, and landed a position at a growing tech company. I lived well below my means, sharing apartments with roommates despite my increasing salary. With each promotion came greater responsibility and compensation, but I maintained my frugal lifestyle. 3 months ago, my years of careful planning and aggressive saving finally paid off. I purchased my first home, a modern 2-bedroom condo in Seattle's desirable Lake Union district. Nothing extravagant, but definitely an achievement I was proud of. The day I got my keys, I invited my family over to celebrate. "This is quite impressive," Dad said, walking through my new home, running his fingers along the granite countertops. There was something in his tone I couldn't quite place. Pride, certainly, but something else, too. Mom hugged me tightly. "It's beautiful, honey. But don't you think it's a bit much for just one person, all this space?" Sophia wandered from room to room, her expression a mixture of admiration and something that looked like envy. "I can't even imagine affording my own place," she sighed. That was the first time I noticed a shift in our family dynamic. What should have been a celebration of my achievement somehow transformed into a discussion about Sophia's housing struggles. Dad mentioned how rental prices were skyrocketing, Mom talked about Sophia's artistic talent being undervalued, and my sister looked increasingly uncomfortable. This pattern continued at every family gathering afterward. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became forums for discussing Sophia's living situation. At first, I didn't think much of it. Families care about each other's problems, right? But the frequency and intensity of these conversations began to make me uneasy. "Sophia's roommate is moving out next month," Mom would announce while passing the potatoes. "Rent in this city is criminal," Dad would add, looking pointedly at me. I started feeling a growing discomfort with these conversations, but dismissed my concerns. They were just worried about Sophia. That's what families do. They worry about each other. At least that's what I told myself until everything changed. It was the last Sunday of August time for our monthly family dinner at my parents' suburban home. I had a light workload that day and decided to arrive early to help with preparations. Usually I texted before showing up, but this time I wanted to surprise them. The summer evening was warm as I pulled into the familiar driveway. I noticed all 3 cars were there. Dad's sensible sedan, Mom's newer SUV, and Sophia's beat-up hatchback. Odd that they were all home already, as dinner wasn't for another hour. Walking up the brick pathway to the front door, I remembered all the times I'd come home to this house after college graduation, after landing my first job, after each promotion. This place represented safety and support. I used my key to unlock the front door and stepped quietly into the entryway. The house seemed unusually quiet, except for hushed voices coming from the kitchen. I was about to call out when I heard my name mentioned. "Emma makes more than enough to help with the down payment," my father's voice carried clearly through the hallway. "She just got that big bonus last quarter." I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. Something in his tone made me stay silent. "She just bought herself that expensive condo, surely she can help her sister too," my mother responded. "It's the right thing to do. Family helps family." I inched closer to the kitchen doorway, my heart beginning to race. Were they talking about asking me for money? "But how do we convince her?" Sophia's voice sounded smaller, hesitant. "She's always been so careful with money. She'll want to know about repayment plans and interest." I held my breath, waiting for someone to defend my reasonable financial boundaries. "We'll tell her it's just a loan," my father replied. His accountant's voice calculating and cold, in a way I'd never heard before. "But once she signs the papers, there's nothing she can do. She makes enough that she won't miss it anyway." "Richard?" My mother sounded shocked, but not disapproving. After a pause, she added, "We don't need to put it that way. We'll just emphasize how much Sophia needs this. Emma has always been the responsible one. She'll want to help her sister." The kitchen fell silent for a moment. Then Sophia spoke, her voice barely audible. "I don't know about this. It doesn't seem right to trick her." "Do you want your own place or not?" My father's voice hardened. "This is your chance. That apartment won't stay on the market long." My stomach twisted into knots. I felt dizzy, like the floor beneath me had suddenly disappeared. These people planning to manipulate me weren't strangers. They were my parents and my sister. The very people who should have protected me were plotting to exploit me. My first instinct was to burst into the kitchen and confront them, to demand an explanation for this betrayal. But something held me back. A cold, calculating voice in my head that sounded disturbingly like my father's suggested I might learn more if they didn't know I was on to them. I backed up silently to the front door, then opened and closed it loudly. "Hello, I'm early," I called out, infusing my voice with a cheerfulness I absolutely did not feel. The kitchen fell instantly silent. When I walked in, 3 startled faces turned toward me. My father recovered first. "Emma, what a nice surprise," he said, his voice transformed into the warm tone I recognized. "We were just talking about dinner." My mother rushed over to hug me, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "You're so early. We haven't even started cooking yet." Sophia stood awkwardly by the counter, her cheeks flushed. "Hey, sis," she mumbled. As I returned their greetings, I observed them with new eyes. The meaningful glances they exchanged, the overly cheerful tone in my mother's voice, the calculating look behind my father's smile. My entire family had been transformed into strangers in the span of 2 minutes. Dinner that evening was an exercise in self-control. My mother prepared her signature lasagna. My father opened an expensive bottle of wine, and conversation flowed with unusual animation. I played along, laughing at Dad's jokes and asking Mom about her garden club, all while my mind replayed the conversation I'd overheard. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat in a familiar way that usually preceded what he considered important announcements. "So Sophia has some exciting news," he said, nodding encouragingly at my sister. Sophia put down her fork, looking uncomfortable. "I've been apartment hunting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Found a place I really like." "It's perfect for her," my mother chimed in enthusiastically. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen in that new development downtown. Safe neighborhood, close to potential clients." "Sounds nice," I commented, taking a sip of wine. "Those new downtown units must be pretty expensive." My father nodded seriously. "About $350,000. A bit of a stretch for Sophia on her own, but it's a solid investment in this market. $350,000. The amount registered in my mind like an alarm bell. That was a substantial sum, more than half of what I'd paid for my own place after saving for years. That's quite a price tag, I said carefully. How are you planning to afford it, Sophia? The three of them exchanged glances before my mother reached across the table to touch my hand. Sweetheart, we've been talking about this as a family, she said, her voice taking on the emotional tone she used when trying to get her way. Sophia's really struggling with her housing situation, and this opportunity won't last long. Family should help family, my father added the very words I'd heard him use earlier. You've been so blessed with your career. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider this. So you're suggesting I help Sophia buy this apartment? Just with the down payment, my father clarified quickly. Maybe 20%. You just got that big bonus, and with your tax bracket you could actually benefit from the investment deduction. My mother launched into stories about how I'd always been the responsible big sister, how Sophia had always looked up to me, how this would make such a difference in her life. Her eyes filled with tears as she described Sophia's struggles with inconsistent income. She's an artist, Emma. You know how difficult that path can be. All the while, Sophia sat silently pushing food around her plate, occasionally nodding when my parents made a point but never adding much herself. I asked seemingly innocent questions about the apartment's location, the terms of the sale, and the overall market conditions. My father answered enthusiastically, clearly pleased that I appeared to be considering their proposal. We can go over the details next weekend, he suggested as my mother brought out dessert. Give you some time to think about it. I can bring the paperwork for us to review together. That sounds reasonable. I agreed, maintaining my facade of consideration. As I drove home that night, the full weight of what had happened crashed down on me. My family had been plotting to manipulate me into financing my sister's apartment. They'd discussed tricking me into signing paperwork with no intention of repayment. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. Every family memory replayed in my mind with new context. Dad teaching me about finances. Was it really to prepare me for success, or to create a safety net for the rest of them? Mom's preference for Sophia, was it motherly love for her sensitive child, or grooming her to expect bailouts? All those childhood lessons about family first, were they just preparing me to be taken advantage of? By the time I reached my condo, tears streamed down my face. I felt like a fool. But beneath the hurt, something else was brewing: determination. I called in sick to work the next day. There was no way I could focus on coding when my entire understanding of my family had been shattered. Instead, I channeled my analytical skills into understanding exactly what was happening and developing a response. First, I researched the apartment complex Sophia was interested in. It wasn't difficult to identify based on my parents' description. The development looked impressive on the surface. Sleek marketing materials showed modern finishes and amenity-filled common spaces. But digging deeper into city records and online reviews revealed concerns, complaints about construction quality, an ongoing assessment dispute, and signs that the neighborhood was declining rather than up and coming as advertised. The $350,000 price tag was significantly above market value for comparable properties. In other words, it was a bad investment, something my accountant father surely knew. I called my friend Rachel, who worked as a financial advisor. We'd met at a Women in Tech conference years ago and remained close. Rachel was the one person I trusted completely with money matters. Your family is taking advantage of your success, she stated bluntly after I explained the situation. And it sounds like this isn't the first time, just the most obvious. That comment made me review past financial interactions with my family. There was the emergency car repair for Dad last year that cost $3,000. Mom's unexpected medical bill that insurance wouldn't cover. Sophia's art supplies for a career-making commission that somehow never materialized. Each instance seemed reasonable at the time. Family helps family, right? But together, they formed a pattern I'd been too close to see. My next step was investigating my parents' financial situation. I felt guilty about this invasion of privacy, but they'd crossed a line with their scheming. Public records revealed surprising information. My parents had purchased a luxury car 6 months ago and acquired a vacation property last year. These were not the actions of people who couldn't help their younger daughter with housing. The truth became clear: they could have helped Sophia themselves, but preferred to use my money instead. That evening, I created a detailed plan for our upcoming discussion. I prepared a folder with my research on the apartment complex, documentation of my previous financial support to the family, and an alternative proposal for helping Sophia achieve financial independence without manipulating me. I also worked on emotional preparation, anticipating their reactions and practicing my responses. The daughter they knew would have eventually given in to their pressure. The woman I had become, the one who had just discovered their betrayal, would not. The following Saturday, I arrived at my parents' house with my folder tucked under my arm. My stomach churned with anxiety, but my resolve remained firm. This confrontation was necessary, not just for my financial protection, but for the health of our family relationships. They'd prepared for this meeting too. The dining room table had been cleared of its usual decorative centerpiece, replaced by neat stacks of papers. My father sat at the head of the table, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking every bit the professional accountant. My mother busied herself bringing in coffee and Sophia's favorite cookies, as if sweetening the atmosphere would make their scheme more palatable. Sophia sat with hunched shoulders, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "Emma, right on time." My father greeted me with a broad smile. "I've got all the paperwork ready for us to review." "We're so excited about this," my mother added, squeezing my shoulder as she placed a coffee mug in front of me. "You're such a blessing to this family." I smiled tightly and took a seat across from Sophia. "Let's see what you've put together." My father slid several documents toward me. "This first one is the gift letter for the down payment. The lender requires this to show the money isn't another loan." "Gift letter?" I questioned, picking up the paper. "I thought this was supposed to be a loan from me to Sophia." My parents exchanged a quick glance. "Well, technically, the bank needs to see it as a gift," my father explained smoothly. "But between us, of course, Sophia will pay you back when she can." I continued reviewing the documents, asking clarifying questions about each one, noting how my father became increasingly enthusiastic as I appeared to be going along with the plan. "And this document here," I said, pointing to a clause in one of the agreements, "it states that I would be solely responsible for the down payment with no structured repayment plan from Sophia." "That's just standard legal language," my father dismissed. "Nothing to worry about." I nodded thoughtfully and continued reading. After about 20 minutes of this, when they clearly thought I was on the verge of signing, I closed the folder and looked up. "Before I sign anything, I'd like to clarify something," I said calmly. "Last Sunday I arrived at the house early. I was in the entryway when I overheard you discussing how to trick me into paying for Sophia's apartment." The room fell silent. My mother's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. My father's professional demeanor cracked as his eyes widened in shock. Sophia looked up for the first time, her face pale. "I don't know what you think you heard." My father started, his voice defensive. "I heard you say, and I quote, 'We'll tell her it's just a loan, but once she signs the papers, there's nothing she can do.' Does that sound familiar?" My mother recovered first, her expression shifting from shock to wounded indignation. "After everything we've done for you, we raised you, paid for your education, supported your career choices. We're your family," my father added, anger replacing his usual calculated calm. "You're being selfish when your sister needs help." I turned to Sophia, who looked on the verge of tears. "Did you know about this plan? To trick me into paying for your apartment with no intention of paying me back?" Sophia's eyes darted between our parents before she finally whispered, "They said it was the only way, that you could afford it easily and wouldn't miss the money." She swallowed hard. "But I told them it felt wrong. I didn't want to do it this way." "You ungrateful child," my mother snapped at her. "We're trying to secure your future." I raised my hand, silencing the escalating argument. "I have something to share as well." I pulled out my own folder and laid it on the table. I've done some research on this apartment Sophia is considering. I spread out printouts showing the property details, community reviews, and property value assessments. This development has serious construction issues that will require expensive fixes within the next few years. The neighborhood is declining in value, not appreciating, and the asking price is about 15% above market value for comparable properties. My father started to interrupt, but I continued. In other words, this isn't just an attempt to take advantage of me financially. It's also a bad investment that would leave Sophia with an overpriced property requiring expensive repairs. I turned to my sister. Sophia, I'd like to make a counteroffer. Instead of giving you money for a down payment on an overpriced apartment, I'd like to pay for 6 months of financial counseling with Rachel, my financial advisor friend. She can help you create a realistic budget, build your credit, and save for a home that's actually within your means. My parents' reactions were immediate and furious. How dare you suggest your sister needs financial counseling? My mother exclaimed. You think you know better than me about real estate investments? My father's face flushed with anger. But Sophia's reaction surprised all of us. She straightened in her chair, a flicker of interest crossing her face. What would that involve exactly? I explained Rachel's approach to financial planning, emphasizing how it had helped me achieve my own goals. She won't judge your artistic career. She'll help you build financial stability around it. Don't listen to her, my mother interrupted, placing her hand on Sophia's arm. She doesn't really want to help you. She's just being controlling. Sophia pulled her arm away, something I'd never seen her do before. I want to hear what Emma is saying. I continued showing them the pattern of financial requests I'd documented over the years. I love all of you, but I won't be manipulated. Not anymore. My father stood up his chair, scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. We're your parents. We know what's best for this family. Do you? I challenged. Because I found some interesting information about your own finances. I laid out printouts showing their recent luxury car purchase and vacation property acquisition. You could easily help Sophia yourselves if her housing situation is so dire. Instead, you chose to manipulate me. The room fell silent as my parents stared at the evidence of their comfortable financial situation. Sophia broke the silence. Is this true? You could have helped me yourselves. When neither of our parents answered, Sophia stood up. Stop using me to get Emma's money. My mother's face contorted with rage. After everything we've sacrificed for both of you, this is how you repay us, by turning against your family. Family doesn't manipulate family, I responded calmly. Family doesn't lie to family. My father delivered the ultimatum I'd been expecting. Either you help your sister with this apartment, or you're no longer welcome in this house. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Despite anticipating this reaction, hearing it spoken aloud still hurt more than I could have imagined. But I stood firm. I've always been there for this family, but not like this. Not through manipulation and lies. I gathered my documents and stood up. I'll be here when you're ready for an honest relationship. As I walked toward the door, my parents shouted behind me, a mixture of threats and guilt trips designed to pull me back into their control. I kept walking, each step both painful and liberating. To my surprise, I heard footsteps behind me. Sophia had followed me outside. Emma, wait, she called. I didn't know they were planning this, I swear. The week after the confrontation was one of the most painful periods of my life. My parents didn't call or text their silence a punishment designed to make me capitulate. I spent countless hours questioning myself, wondering if I'd overreacted or misunderstood their intentions. But each time I revisited the evidence and remembered their words, my resolve strengthened. 8 days after the confrontation, Sophia texted asking to meet for coffee. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe halfway between our places. She arrived looking different somehow, more present, less like the dreamy artistic sister I'd always known. We ordered our drinks and found a table in the corner where we could talk privately. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I knew they were planning to ask you for money, but I didn't know they were going to trick you. When I heard Dad talking about the gift letter versus loan thing, it felt wrong, but I didn't speak up enough. Why did you go along with it at all? I asked. Sophia sighed. You've always been the successful one, the responsible one. I've spent my whole life feeling like I'm disappointing them because I'm not you. When they suggested you could help with the apartment, it seemed like maybe for once they were on my side. She looked down at her coffee. But that's not really true, is it? They were using both of us. That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between Sophia and me. For the first time, we talked honestly about our parents' manipulative tactics and how they'd affected us both. I shared my feelings of being valued only for what I could provide financially. She confessed her feelings of inadequacy and resentment. I don't want to be financially dependent on anyone, she said firmly. Not them, not you. I want to stand on my own. I helped Sophia create a realistic budget based on her fluctuating income. We looked at her spending habits and identified areas where she could cut back without sacrificing her quality of life. I connected her with Rachel for professional financial counseling, and Sophia committed to saving a small amount from each freelance check. 3 months later, Sophia found a modest apartment with a roommate who was also a graphic designer. They shared workspace and occasionally collaborated on projects, increasing both their incomes. She opened her first investment account with a small amount and began building her credit score. Meanwhile, I started therapy to process the family trauma and set healthier boundaries. I learned that my value wasn't tied to what I could provide financially. I began to recognize other instances of manipulation in my life and developed strategies to address them. 6 months after our confrontation, my mother called. Her voice lacked its usual confident tone. "We miss you at Sunday dinners," she said simply. It wasn't an apology, but it was an opening. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a restaurant near my office. Both my parents came looking older and subdued. The conversation was difficult. They attempted to minimize what had happened, suggesting I had misunderstood their intentions. I remained firm, referring specifically to the words I'd overheard and the documents they'd prepared. "I love you both," I told them. "But I need you to understand that what you did was wrong. I won't be manipulated financially or emotionally." It took several more conversations over the following months, but gradually they began to acknowledge their behavior. My father admitted that he'd become accustomed to seeing me as the family's financial safety net. My mother confessed that she'd always used emotional manipulation to get her way, not just with me, but with everyone. 1 year after the confrontation that changed everything, our family dynamics had shifted dramatically. We still had Sunday dinners occasionally, but with new boundaries firmly in place. Financial topics were discussed openly and honestly with no hidden agendas. Sophia had become more independent and confident, building her graphic design business and managing her money responsibly. As for me, I discovered that setting boundaries, though painful, was essential for genuine relationships. The family I had now might be more complicated than the idealized version I'd believed in before, but it was real. We were learning to relate to each other as adults with respect and honesty. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries that allow everyone to grow. By refusing to participate in their manipulation, I gave my family the opportunity to develop healthier relationships. It wasn't easy, and the path forward wasn't always clear, but it was necessary. The healing continues every day. And while our family may never be perfect, we're building something authentic based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. That's worth more than any amount of money. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Comment below and share your experience. It takes courage to stand up for yourself even when it's painful. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more authentic life experiences. Remember, you deserve relationships built on respect and honesty, not manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you navigate your own complex family dynamics with strength and wisdom.